Daily news. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. We're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick, and today we are going to be going over a new pachycephalosaur or dome-headed dinosaur discovery. As well as several other species of dinosaurs. So, from Sci News, rare fossil of baby dome-headed dinosaur unearthed in Canada. For many years, the fossil record of pachycephalosaurs, dome-headed dinosaurs, has been dominated by fossilized skulls. Well, that would depend on the specific species of Pachycephalosaur. They first evolved during the Aptian stage of the Cretaceous around 120 million years ago. Um, but there have been certain species where it's just simply fragments of their skull and the whole um, face is not entirely intact. Postcranial material of young pachycephalosaurs, by contrast, has remained almost entirely unknown. Paleontologists have now described the youngest example yet of a pachycephalosaur body, offering a look at how these dinosaurs grew and moved during their first months of life. I would assume that the pachycephalosaurs in general, this is not a very now, this is claiming that it's a younger individual, but I was going to say that the dome is not very pronounced. The pachycephalosaurs were not a very large group of dinosaurs, and even when it came to their overall size, they didn't reach much larger than 15 feet in length. They're pushing around 5 meters. So, this looks like something related to maybe Stegosaurus or a Homocephaly. And Stegosaurus, despite the beginning of its name, is not a species of stegosaur. It is slightly related, but it's more closely related to animals such as Triceratops and Ionosaurus, or the Centrosaurus or horned dinosaurs in general. Also, when it comes to the pachycephalosaurs, it was originally assumed that pachycephalosaurs were herbivorous, but further analysis on their dental structure suggests that these creatures were actually carnivorous for the most part. Maybe they were feeding on certain species of fruit, but outside of that, not really having the ability to slice through different species of plants. At least when it came to the leafy or barky or woody parts. I don't think barky is a word. Let's see. Pachycephalosauridae comprises mostly small, between 2 and 6 meter long, 20 feet, which is 6 meters. That's an immense Pachycephalosaurus, which was one of the last Pachycephalosaurs to exist. It is certainly possible. There are just simply very large individuals, but that's pretty big. Usually, it's not much larger than 15 feet or somewhere around 4.8 meters. Bipedal dinosaurs from the Santonian to the Maastrichtian ages, 85 to 66 million years ago. Pachycephalosauridae dates much further back into the early Cretaceous. 85, there were certain subfamilies that didn't start evolving of Pachycephalosauridae around 85 million years ago. But the whole family in general. It's like you were talking about certain animals of Titanosaurus, so the group of long necked dinosaurs, a certain group of sauropods, or the Herrerasauridae, a group of carnivores in the Triassic period. Okay, let's bring up a species that probably didn't coexist with this animal, but did coexist with different relatives. So the Olorotitan. So Olorititan.
What?
Laura Titan.
It's ITIT?
Yeah, Oloritan. That's it.
It's OLOROT.
Oh, okay. Anyway, this is a species
And no,
of.
I did not know that. It just came up.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was an I or an O. But this is a species of herbivorous hadrosaur from Russia around 80 million years ago, back at the beginning of the hadrosaur's reign over in different parts of Asia and North America. And technically, you could include Europe. And now, due to a recent discovery, As well, northern Africa, we have evidence of animals such as certain species of hadrosaur. I forgot the name of it, but roaming different parts of Morocco towards the end of the Cretaceous period, around 67 million years ago. So it's possible they might have, well, it is likely they roamed a large portion of different areas of North Africa that were not underwater at that time. Considering, depending on the time of the Cretaceous, you would have had different areas of Africa, Asia, as well as Europe and North America underwater. There were certain also, well, there are different South American marine deposits, which we have found long necked plesiosaurs in the region. But focusing on this specific species of hadrosaur, it is a member of the Lambeosaurinae. This is a very weird depiction of it. This looks like some sort of an alien or somebody decided to mix an ornithomimid, so an animal like Gallimimus or Ornithomimus, the ostrich-like dinosaurs, a Protoceratops, so a small species of ceratopsian, and I'd say an earlier species of ornithopod from the Jurassic, like a very long-necked
I
Camptosaurus.
I just can't stop thinking xenomorph.
Yeah, it's what he looks like. It's either that or a blend of the 3 animals. Okay, well, besides that, yeah, this is much better. Allura Titan, I'd say the Lambeosaurs in general had very robust neck structures, but definitely more pronounced in more recent constructions. Um The forelimbs, despite how thin they look compared to their body size, they actually were quite well structured enough to support the animal's weight.
Is that a kangaroo leg?
Uh, wait, what kangaroo leg? Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, dinosaurs. Huh. Okay, that is odd. Um, I don't think they would have necessarily sat like that. But
Oh,
my
the
question
back is
is,
ripped up.
is this animal trying to kill, this specific or lower titan, or I'm not sure what's going on. And no, I do not think in any way that this is mating. This is just deranged, whatever's going on here. I can't figure it out. Um, sheesh. Anyway,
Yeah, that actually was the perfect comment. Anyway.
interesting alien, and then that.
There's also that guy.
Oh, yeah, he's a bit too skinny. So this is a Jurassic World Evolution sort of model. The crest is also a bit too much like certain other species of Lambeosaurs, but there have been certain depictions of Allure Titans having that look of a crest, but this is a bit better. This also almost represents or resembles certain species of lambeosaurs over in North America, like Hypacrosaurus and Lambeosaurus itself. But Lambeosaurus still had a very distinct sort of crest structure. There seems to be possibly it's a relative of the Saurolophus in the back corner, but almost like no, wait, it's not a Saurolophus, it's something else. I mean, it is a member of the Saurolophini lineage of hadrosaurs, just off to the left. And they seem to be some smaller species of ornithomimid in front of the Allura titans. So I believe this is supposed to take place in a conifer, sort of, I'd say a swamp region of Russia around 80 million years ago. It is very possible there were certain species of tyrannosaurs that existed at this time, but precisely in the region, I'm not sure if we have any evidence for specific species of tyrannosaurs. I think if there are any specimens, they're very fragmentary, and the specific animal hasn't been named or at least identified. Um, there might have been Zhu Shang Tyrannus. The problem is Zhu Shang Tyrannus. Let's look him up. Will not really evolve for another 4 million years at least. So ZHUCHENGTYRANNUS. Okay. So this was a large species of tyrannosaur for the time, especially over in Asia. You could say it almost dwarfed the tyrannosaurs that existed over in corresponding North America during the Campanian stage of the Cretaceous. And it was a close relative, but it did not come into contact with predators like Gorgosaurus and Albertosaurus. Despite Gorgosaurus being in close proximity, somewhat technically, it was separated by ocean.
Okay, what am I looking at?
Gorgosaurus has been found over in Alaska. Yeah, this is a bad AI picture of a some tyrannosaur with 3 fingers, and also the body's completely off. The Edmontosaurus isn't bad. I think it has too thick of feet or too thick of toes, a bit too like stumpy or elephant-like of a foot, at least on the hind feet. And the front feet, they're not. They're a bit too. They almost look like they're webbed feet, and they're not in really in the shape of a hoof to a major extent. Hadrosaurs, like, despite you being able to identify the separate digits, they had a very hoof-like foot. Let's see, but not exactly with all the fingers comprised into like a singular um, sort of structure. You still had it where there were 2 fingers separated. Um, Also, he looks a bit skinny. You shouldn't see his rib cage. So I'm guessing these are either supposed to be like a older Zhusheng Tyrannus and a younger species or a younger individual, or that's supposed to be T Rex, and that's supposed to be Zhusheng Tyrannus, which would probably be a somewhat similar, a good comparison.
Wait, he was that much bigger?
Zhusheng Tyrannus was somewhere around 30 feet in length or 9 meters, and probably weighed up to 4 to 5 tons, and T Rex was much larger. They are somewhat closely related, but different. North American species of tyrannosaurs were more closely related to T Rex. Whoa, wow. They definitely gave his distinct skull depiction in this image. It does look like an older picture, though. I don't mind it. Seems a bit like it's watercolored.
He's got some big feet.
Um, yeah, it does. Also, he seems to be on his ankles in this position. So maybe that was right with that weird Allure Titan picture. It is interesting. I mean, I like how they're having the young have a bit of a tug of war over a piece of flesh. Maybe he killed some hadrosaur or maybe an ornithomime in the region. There are also different species of ceratopsians. They just aren't too common when it comes to larger species, which is odd for Asia. There were different species of ceratopsians also earlier in the Cretaceous that existed over in Asia, but for some reason they never became as abundant as over in North America. Okay, let's head back to the article. Okay, said Carleton University paleontologist Brian Moore and his colleagues. The clade is best known for the fusion of its frontal and parietal bones into an inflated dome. The surrounding cranial elements are sometimes incorporated into this structure and are often adorned with nodes, spikes, and other ornaments. This is also something that separates the Pachycephalosaurs um, from like different species of herbivores today when it comes to just the overall morphology of the horn structure of animals like Cape buffalo, bison, bighorn sheep. Who's another one? I guess you could say water buffalo as well. Water buffalo and Cape buffalo are 2 completely different species of bovids. So, you don't really see a lot of, like, different horn characteristics when it comes to these types of mammalian herbivores, whereas when it comes to pachycephalosaurs, these carnivores had a wide range of different horn-like characteristics on their domes. Um, but it is a bit of a question as to why they decided in or at least their body decided in evolution to evolve these types of traits. It's also something that we somewhat see in certain types of crocodilomorphs, not necessarily a dome-like structure, but the different horn characteristics. Same thing for the ceratopsians along their frills. So the surrounding cranial elements are sometimes incorporated into this structure and are often adorned with nodes, spikes, and other ornaments. Oh, I already said that. because the frontoparietal domes are the most taphonomically resistant parts of Pachycephalosaur skeletons, except for teeth. The Pachycephalosaurian fossil record is dominated by these partial cranial remains. It does seem, when it comes to the Pachycephalosaurs in general, it tends to be where their skull, maybe just simply due to how robust it was formed, they tend to fossilize quite well, like many species of ceratopsians and their skulls. Since it is not necessarily uncommon to find the skulls of different species of ceratopsians. However, depending on how rare the species is, and it can vary with fragmentary remains. So, as a result, much of what is known about Pachycephalosaur ontogeny and phylogeny is based largely on skull morphology. Cataloged as CMNFB 22039, the newly described Pachycephalosaurian specimen is approximately 67 million years old, restricting age of the late Cretaceous epoch. Interesting. So, this is a late species of Pachycephalosaur. Whatever this is, we don't know, at least so far. um, it could be a Pachycephalosaurus, but I don't think it is, at least based on the depiction. It seems to have far too, like, flat of a skull structure. Now, when you look at certain species of dinosaurs, other carnivores, but theropods specifically, like tyrannosaurs, they start off with very thin and narrow jaw structures, and overall just a very sleek and in some cases skinny sort of anatomy and physiology. And as they become older, with most species, especially later in their evolution, they became, or they put on a lot of density in their anatomy. There were certain species that practically stayed sleek their whole life, so, maybe this Pachycephalosaur is going to do the same thing and become a Pachycephalosaurus. Or maybe it's something related to the Stegosaurus. Actually, let's bring up a Pachycephalosaur, and specifically Stegosaurus. Or, yeah, Stegoceras. So, this is a medium-sized species of Pachycephalosaur from Alberta, Canada. And this animal existed in the region about 70 to 71 million years ago. This is a much older reconstruction of the animal. I mean, I like the older depictions of Stegosaurus, but even newer depictions, the creature is just very adorable.
Here he's
But
happy.
yeah, this is still a very intimidating animal, despite it only being around 7 feet in length or pushing 2.1 meters. It could definitely take on practically any predator its size. It would definitely have any species, most species of dromaeosaurs would have trouble taking down this animal, at least alone. Even the creatures like Dromaeosaurus itself, which is somewhere around 6 feet in length or pushing 1.8 meters, and probably weighed 30 to 40 pounds or a little over 15 kilograms. They'd still have to be quite careful because these Pachycephalosaurs, or Pachycephalosaurs in general, were very mobile and likely had the ability to turn rather quick or make a whole 360-degree turn. So this AI picture, yeah, the Tyrannosaur in the background doesn't really resemble any Tyrannosaur that would have existed in the area. Possibly Daspletosaurus, but Daspletosaurus by 70 million years ago had already gone extinct. Um, so Stegosaurus, the problem also with these individuals is that they look like younger Pachycephalosaurs. Even then, there should be a lot more, I think, musculature to Pachycephalosaurus. But for Stegosaurus, the dome's completely off. It should be a bit flatter and a bit more circular in reconstruction. Also, when it comes to the body in general, I think there should also be a bit more flesh, especially on the core of the animal.
Okay, what about this?
Um, the neck, I think, should also have more muscle. That's a practical Stegosaurus model of, skull. I mean, that's pretty decent.
Wait a minute, I've got
I don't know. Maybe it is authentic. But likely when it came to eating, Stegosaurus, also these were quick animals, definitely capable of running easily over 22 miles an hour or pushing 38 kilometers. Okay, that's a larger, at least I couldn't it's really hard to tell in that other um specimen, but this upper
Well, this
jaw,
says Pachycephalosaur.
well, Pachycephalosaurus probably is Stegosaurus. It has a very Stegosaurus sort of in accumulation to the overall dome. The horn-like structures where the eye socket and how the eye socket is placed. The nostrils. It's very interesting with Pachycephalosaurs. Their nostrils are at the very or towards the very front of the snout, almost like with what you see in certain species of crocodilomorphs, or not necessarily crocodilomorphs, but in earlier um, family of archosaurs called the phytosaurs.
Look,
Oh, yes, that's yeah, looks good. It might be the Pachycephalosaur. Actually, I don't know. I think he's supposed to be green. But anyway, Stegosaurus. Just trying to think of what else when it comes to this animal. Oh, so it was likely feeding on different species of smaller reptiles, amphibians. It might have been digging for insects, possibly even scavenged. Did it hunt smaller dinosaur species? It certainly is possible. They had the capability to do so. Now, they did have rather small arms compared to their body size, and they did have to be quite careful considering, at least when it came to ramming into each other, not to, or at least prevent their arms getting crushed. But it does look like, depending on what species of Pachycephalosaur we're referring to, that we have found preserved skin of these animals where it looks like there's a slight layer of armor on at least the sides of their rib cages. So these were um, very robust animals. I like how um, he gave this Stegosaurus a very swollen sort of a neck structure, almost like it's trying to represent this animal specifically um, being active during the breeding season, and like with different species of deer today during the fall, and when their testosterone massively increases and their necks become extremely wide. So I like this sort of type of physiological convergent evolution. But what is also interesting is they added feathers to the Pachycephalosaur. We don't have any evidence for Pachycephalosaurs in general having feathers. So that is interesting. It certainly is possible, despite these animals being members of the Ornithischiae lineage of dinosaurs. And he um, he looks proud. Oh, yeah, it's interesting when it comes to their arms too, or at least their hands. They were one of the only species of bipedal dinosaurs to pose an almost like ceratopsian sort of a forelimb or a hand, but it's up in the air. Also, very theropod-like foot or feet to an extent, however, not being closely related. Yeah, I thought that's a good, upper jaw specimen, the other picture, and I think that's a full intact real specimen. Also, this animal probably didn't weigh much more than, 130 pounds or pushing maybe 60 kilograms. Okay, we can head back to the article. Okay, so the fossil was found within the Frenchman Formation, the youngest of five Maastrichtian formations in southern Saskatchewan, Canada. Whoa! Well, there's a place over in central Canada that we don't tend to hear a lot about when it comes to different species of dinosaurs and their discoveries. Is Saskatchewan? It does occur, approximate to certain geological areas or units over in Alberta. So Alberta is just west of Saskatchewan, but that is really interesting. This dinosaur was likely less than a year old when it died. Wow. Making it the youngest pachycephalosaur known from skeletal remains. Well, that's really good to hear. This wow. Um This is really astonishing. You could say, well, it's unfortunate we didn't find like a true baby, but this kind of is a baby considering it took several years for pachycephalosaurs to become fully mature despite their smaller size. So, despite its small size, estimated total length of 90 centimeters or 3 feet, or I guess a little under a meter, the skeleton shows several characters diagnostic of Pachycephalosauria. I would assume so. I mean, we haven't seen a picture of the specimen, but I don't know what else you would confuse it with. Now, there is a certain species of dinosaur. It's not hitting me at the moment, but it has very pachycephalosaur-like features, and I believe it's from the early Cretaceous as well, somewhere between 110 to 120 million years ago. And it also has very ceratopsian or horned dinosaur like characteristics too. And it's still up for debate, the animal I'm referring to, whether or not it is a ceratopsian or it is a pachycephalosaur. It's definitely not a member of Ceratopsidae or the different subfamilies of pachycephalosaur that evolved somewhere around 83 to 84 million years ago because it was found much earlier in time. The findings show that many of the features scientists rely on to identify adult pachycephalosaurs were already present very early in life. I mean, he is quite heavily developed when you look at the overall physiology of the pachycephalosaur in the picture. It has, I wouldn't say a lot of necessarily it's maybe bone density to put on relative to its body size, compared to different other or different lineages of dinosaurs that look very thin earlier in life. They also hint at how young pachycephalosaurs moved. Compared with adults, the juveniles' hind limbs were proportionally long, suggesting a more cursorial or speed oriented build early in life. Well, that's interesting. Pachycephalosaurs tend to be viewed as agile, even well, technically agile means the ability to turn efficiently, or they're very speedy even later in life. So that is interesting. I okay, well now that it said that, I can see where there is a bit more of length put into legs compared to later with the adults, which seem to have more like a stockier build. So the adults are almost like a very quick, I don't know, Neanderthal or something. They're just not running around with spears because they didn't really have the ability. Well, they could probably pick up a stick. It would just be relatively hard. So it'd be like, kill the, young Torosaurus because they're carnivores. Let's see. Well, you know what? Speaking of him,
I thought you said packies were omnivores.
it's possible that they might have fed on fruit, but they didn't have the, tooth structure to slice through vegetation or at least different types of leaves. That was practically impossible for them. Let's look up Torosaurus as well. Torosaurus. So this is a close relative of the Triceratops. And this animal still reached around the same length as Triceratops, pushing around 30 feet or 9 meters. However, it is not as heavily built. Even its frill structure or the area of bones covering its neck is much thinner um, compared to Triceratops's frill. Now, Torosaurus, however, has one of the longest heads of any species of dinosaur to be discovered. Its head is around 9 feet in length, or pushing around 2.7 meters. And also, when it comes to the horns, they were probably pushing around 3.5 to 4 feet without actually possibly longer than 4 feet, or probably somewhere around 1.3 to 1.4 meters with an extra layer of keratin. It's the same substance your hair and fingernails are made out of, or even a rhino's horn. So, also the frill in general would have been covered in keratin too. The same thing would have occurred in the Pachycephalosaurus domes. However, oh, wonder what paleontologist this is. Well, where was I going out with the Pachycephalosaurus? It's not hitting me at the moment. The ceratopsians, like Torosaurus, were for the most part just simply herbivores. They had very sharp teeth compared to the Pachycephalosaurs, which would have helped them slice through the tough layers of the different species of ferns, flowers, certain species of ginkgos, even early primitive but distantly related grasses existed at the time. Also, due to the fact that different species of late Cretaceous ceratopsians thrived in a wide variety of swamp and marsh ecosystems, it's likely that they were feeding on different species of aquatic plants too. This is a very well preserved skull structure of the Torosaurus. Wow. I am wondering about those horns. Yeah, I think they look fine. It is interesting with the Torosaurus because unlike Triceratops, it really doesn't have that bulge of bone blocking the front of its eyes. So that's why you can stand right in front of a Triceratops and not be seen. The problem is it would make the animal extremely nervous. Same thing for Torosaurus. I mean, for most herbivores, that's why they try to get a bit of a side view. Vegetarians do this too. But when it comes to Torosaurus in general, this animal had also much thinner horns compared to Triceratops, even certain members, other members of the Chasmosaur lineage of dinosaurs, and other members of the Centrosaur lineage of the Ceratopsidae. So, this definitely looks like an older depiction of Torosaurus. It's still not bad. That is a very recognizable 1970s, 1980s, possibly even the 60s sort of a depiction of the frill. And certainly today there's more, I'd say, width that's been accumulated to it. But another interesting thing when it comes to Torosaurus's frill is it doesn't have the same sort of horn assemblage or small horn assemblage that you see around different species of ceratopsians like Pentaceratops, Diabloceratops, or even Triceratops. It's mostly bare when it comes to a horn assemblage. It's like there are those distinct horns that you see on the side of its face, like with what you see in not just other species of large ceratopsians, but even as you go further back to their evolution, many early species of the bipedal or two-legged ceratopsians had those distinct horns to the side, but they became less pronounced later in their evolution. Why is a big question. Also, this animal weighing around 8 to 9 tons probably had to feed on well over a probably 4 to 500 pounds of food each day, or pushing around 200 250 kilograms. And it existed over in Montana, Wyoming, and South Dakota around 67 million years ago. Okay, let's head back to the article. So, as the animals matured, their bodies appeared to have shifted toward the stockier proportions seen in adults, indicating a change in locomotion as they grew larger and heavier. Yeah, it is quite interesting. I don't think it would have been as stocky of an evolution as certain other lineages of dinosaurs, like with what we see in different species of sauropods, different species of Saurolosaurs, especially the Tyrannosaurs. You could say megaraptors as well. Certain larger species of dromaeosaurs, the stegosaurs too. But even when you look at the young stegosaur hatchlings that we have found baby stegosaurs, not necessarily in the embryo stage, but close. They do have a very wide accumulation to them. Titanosaurs, on the other hand, in many cases, do, depending on the family, have a bit more of a sleek sort of a physiology. But it seems to be that way with these young Pachycephalosaurs. I'd say outside of like the leg structure, though, the rest of it seemed to match the adult version. Less musculature on the neck and maybe even the tail a bit. So I am a bit off on my criticism. So the relatively long hind limbs of the juvenile compared with those of adult pachycephalosaurs indicate probable negative ontogenetic telemetry in the hind limbs. I think that's what I've been referring to. Just simply shorter, stockier legs as they grew older. Also, yeah, when it came to animals like Alaskacephaly, I think the Stegosaurus in general, for some reason, they still retain their speediness. And you could say, well, this could have to simply due to being a smaller size with the Pachycephalosaurs. But see, was he here? No, that's the Zhushang Tyrannus. Here he is. Oh, I didn't notice that. So it is a wow. That is a very stocky leg. Maybe short bursts of speed, but this doesn't really look like the legs of something that is going to keep running for a long distance. Now, if Pachycephalosaurus had air sacs, then it is very possible it might have been able to do so, considering the air sacs would allow the animal to have a continuous influx of oxygen without having to work very hard, unlike mammals. Yeah, it has a much more muscular or much larger amount of musculature compared to that juvenile. Let's see the other. No, it's the AI picture. Oh yeah, this guy. Oh, I forget like how back in like
He
the
actually
19
looks fat.
yeah 1960s 1970s well also aged um aged too, but they gave very thick hind legs to the Pachycephalosaurus. Well, this would happen with a wide range of different types of dinosaurs, megalosaurs in general too, even Allosaurus, which is reconstructed today as being very lean, still quite muscular, but um, just for some reason they just would make the leg structures very fat. But this would go for a wide range of dinosaurs, and it's almost like there was a period in paleo art or dinosaur paintings or depictions in general where there was just this accumulation of fat to a wide range of dinosaurs, like from the 19, I'd say 50s, even maybe 40s, knocking aside certain more renowned paleo artists like Charles R. Knight, which tend to try to stay within the sort of sleek sort of a look, and I'd say all the way up to certain areas of the 1980s, and for some reason, they would come out like this, a very thick tail too. Um, the skull structure in some cases also, I don't know why, but that would occur. But putting that, the out of shapeness out of, to the side, and always remember, round is a shape. But Stegosaurus, at least on this individual, is at least when it comes to the skull, I mean, it looks decent, but the rest of the animal also when it comes to standing upright, this could be an issue for a Stegosaurus. So most usually for the whole time that they're living, they're going to have a more horizontal sort of a stance, like with what you see in different species of theropods, which is interesting. Now, it's not uncommon. There were earlier species of ornithopods that had this type of a structure as well, like the camptosaurs or the dryosaurs of the late Jurassic of North America. I like this depiction. It's giving it an almost like earlier ornithopod, almost like certain members of the Elasmerian lineage of dinosaurs, like Leanosaura over in Australia or Antarctica too. But, they added a lot of feathers, and, yeah, they're definitely giving a very positive sort of an atmosphere.
Looks like a porcupine.
Yeah, a very cheerful porcupine. He has definitely been munching on frogs or something, considering, I would assume also possibly mammals they might have been feeding on as well. They might have even have stocked certain pterosaurs, but something that wasn't hitting me is that these were probably one of those species of carnivores tends to be left out, but were raiding different nests of a wide variety of different species of dinosaurs, especially the hadrosaurs. They make it out like in many reconstructions or certain documentaries that hadrosaurs and pachycephalosaurs kind of just get along, but considering they're carnivorous, or at least now it's more agreed upon, I would think that the hadrosaurs would try to keep these animals away, considering they could possibly break a leg of one of the hadrosaur adults. But considering how small these animals are, depending on the species too, especially Stegosaurus, I doubt that would occur. certainly hurt, but I don't think it would break like an ankle or shin bone of a lambeosaur weighing 4 tons. Okay, well, thanks for joining. And we're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And from Prehistoric to Present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. And remember that nothing is better.